Prince, I don't like
Thank you.
Guys, this bloody barn is freaking me out.
Why?
Why would a bloody barn freak you out? It's just a barn and a whole huge
of all the things
blood.
that we've seen, right? Like, it shouldn't be that big a deal. But
No.
You guys ever hear about the Hinterkaifeck murders?
No.
What?
I hope it doesn't involve people being murdered in a barn, because that'd be really fucked up.
Brutally murdered in a barn.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that is.
March 31st, 1922. The 6 inhabitants of the Gruber farm were brutally killed with a mattock.
What?
M-A-T-T-O-C-K.
Okay, and that is?
A pickaxe.
Oh, my God.
This took place in modern-day Weidhofen, Bavaria, Germany.
Delicious.
The alleged date of the murders was March 31st, 1922. As we'll see throughout the story, investigation methods during the time were lacking by today's standards.
Yeah, I mean, even fingerprints probably weren't really a thing back then.
Wait, anybody see it happen? Nope, we'll never figure this one out, and that's it.
Yep. Tensions run high in pretzel country.
Natural causes.
Text in your response as to who did it at 77.
You could
It's
text
just
back in the
7-7.
20s?
Yeah, it would just be
no
7-7 though.
idea.
Yeah. So the way that these murders were, the way that the bodies were discovered was in stark contrast to the, lacking investigation methods of the local police department there. The neighbor of the Gruber family was a little bit concerned that they had not performed their morning chores on Tuesday, and she came and knocked on the door to find out why.
And that's why we have homeowners associations.
She was also the original HOA manager.
She's the one who discovered them?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Your goats look a little undusted. They're very dusty goats you have.
Dusty goats.
Dusty goats.
You have to
That's
dust
a bad porn star name right there.
them.
That sounds like a farm chore, right? Dusting off your goats?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Goats get dusty, man. They're out there in the hay. They discovered the bodies on Tuesday, April 4th, which would have been about 4 days later. They again realized that they had been missing because the visible chores hadn't been done, and also one of the younger siblings had not been to school on that Monday or the Saturday before. Over the next 64 years, more than 100 suspects have been interviewed and questioned over the 64 years since the murder. The last questioning taking place in 1986. And they still have not found any evidence linking a person to this crime.
Yeah, just take your time.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the more grisly aspects of the murder were that, first of all, the murderer apparently stayed in the house in the farm for several days after the murder. The neighbors reported seeing
days.
Correct. The neighbors reported seeing smoke coming from the chimney. There had been evidence of food being cooked in the kitchen, and the cattle had been fed. So he did do some of the chores.
So it was a crime of circumstance kind of thing where it was like, well, not for nothing, I have this mansion now.
Yeah, he's like,
this entire farmland.
Listen, it's not the cow's fault that I killed these people.
Right, well, he wasn't there when they showed up, so I can't imagine that he thought he was going to get to take over the farm by having killed the current inhabitants, which would be like the old way to take over, right? Like you just show up and kill everyone, then it's your farm now. In 1920s Bavaria, though, they apparently had a little bit more of a judicial system in place. So he had to scram. He wasn't there when they found the bodies. The evidence of him being there, or they, was there, but one of the victims actually didn't die right away. Most of the victims were killed in their sleep as they were laying in bed between the hours of 12 a.m. and 5 a.m., they imagine.
Is that a good way to go, though? I mean, I've always had this discussion with different people. Is like, do you want to just go like all of a sudden you're just gone, or do you want to know you're going to die? I mean, is it better just to be laying there and all of a sudden you stop being?
I'd rather be wide awake unless I'm being murdered. That sounds like,
But what other thing would you be wide awake
surrounded by my
I
loved ones,
agree.
peacefully going,
Yeah.
unless someone is like, hey, I got this pickaxe. Guess what? It's your time, buddy.
That makes sense.
for you.
That makes sense.
Not what
So the
long
short answer
for.
would be depends on how you're going to die.
Yeah.
Long answer,
TBA.
short
TBD.
answer.
TLDR. So they killed the majority of the victims died in their sleep in their beds. There was also evidence that the murderer went back and attacked some of the previous victims after they had already been dead for a while and hit them again with the pickaxe.
Post-mortem.
Just gotta make sure.
Added additional wounds to their
Correct.
bodies.
It begs the question, not only who, as they've been trying to find out, but why? Like, what was the cause? What was the motive for this murder? And several hypotheses have been put forward. One of the prevailing ones being that the man was after some money, that knew that the groupers had a small amount of money and some valuables in their house. And it actually turns out that none of the money or valuables was removed. There was no robbery, and very little of the house was actually sort of disheveled. It was
ransacked.
Right, ransacked.
I love that term, ransacked.
There was
exactly the word.
There was no fracas.
Other than what would have been caused by 6
correct.
murders with a pickaxe.
Other than that, a completely normal scene.
They got murdered in their house or in the barn?
They were murdered in their house.
Okay.
This could have been a transient person. One of the points that I saw that they'd found several cigarettes in the attic of the house, indicating that someone was waiting essentially for them to go to sleep to perform these murders.
Whoa.
I don't know. That could have just been a stressed out mom. Just like, kids, give me 5 minutes. Mommy will be right back. I'm going to go in the attic and just
smoke a really stout Bavarian cigarette. 2 of them, in fact. Yeah. Leave me alone. There was a little bit of, I guess, mystery around.
A little bit?
Other than the whodunit, there was allegedly one of the younger Grubers was the product of an incestuous relationship, if you could call it that, between the father and one of the daughters.
Ooh.
Okay.
And according to the local court and some of the local townsfolk, a neighboring farmer named Lorenz Schlittenbauer had publicly claimed to be the boy's father in order to, I guess,
cover it
to
up,
dissuade, any kind of like looking into.
Did you name him Jon Snow?
To avoid blackmail situation, he or
well, so this man
him to publicly be the father of this child.
Correct. I guess they didn't want. They had organized some type of agreement with this person so that he would pretend to be the father of this child, when in fact it was not so.
Huh.
But the interesting thing about this guy was also one of the first people to quote unquote stumble across the dead bodies, along with a neighbor, and was alleged to have disturbed some of the bodies in the crime scene before the police arrived.
He was like, what, poking him with sticks and stuff?
Well, I don't know.
I'm just going to play some U2 really loud. Is that disturbing?
Everybody look over there! So, this Lorenz Schlittenbauer allegedly disturbed some of the bodies in the crime scene, had some type of motive, depending upon whose encounter or account of the story you take, but they questioned him several times over the years following the murder and never found any evidence to link Lorenz Schlittenbauer to the murders.
Makes a great malt liquor, though.
Schlittenbauer?
Schlittenbauer's a really good malt liquor. It's very smooth, very smooth.
So this is basically a crime scene where there is not much evidence. There's a lot of hearsay, and they continued to investigate it for 64 years?
Correct.
And how could they find 100 people that would give witness to something that happened in
over that span of time?
They questioned over 100 suspects.
That's crazy.
And the numbering people just...
How many people hated these people?
Well, it was
it could have been anybody. We all wanted to pickaxe them. We all wanted to.
It was like transient people who had like wanderers and people who had no real, like they were just interviewing, like trying to just canvas, like, who could have possibly done this. And never apparently got any closer.
It's also, very just a couple years after World War I, the country's in shambles. There's probably a lot of transient people just wandering around, making little hobo signs like this place has good
sketchy
sausage,
transient German wanderers.
They do good bindle repair.
Yeah,
nice.
All it takes too is like one geographic area to be inundated with phone calls to 911. Yeah, I saw that one thing, and then like the folklore happens with
mass
the moth.
hysteria.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Actually, the investigation extended into 2007 was the latest discussion about it. The students, and I'm quoting from the article, the students at the Police Fachschule in Fürstenfeldbruck tried to go at the case with sort of modern crime scene investigation techniques, and they concluded that so much of the crime scene had degraded, so much of the evidence had degraded. And
46 or 64 years.
64 years later.
64 years will do that.
They basically just said, no, there's no way.
There's no more blood on the straw because there's no more straw for the blood to be on.
They did say, though, despite the setbacks of the deterioration of the evidence and the crime scene, that the students at this police academy, as they were sort of researching a cold case, they did name a prime suspect, but declined to name him out of respect for the still living relatives.
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay. It just boggles my mind that there was such interest. Is it the fact that the police force is so efficient in Germany and Bavaria that they solve all these murders? So there's this one cold case that they just can't let go.
I feel like
that's
it's particularly
74, it's 84, it's, God, what is it? 1922.
64, yeah.
It's almost 100 years later now.
It's true.
Yeah. I think the combination of how grisly it was, the fact that it involved children, it was an entire family, and it was completely devoid of like a real suspect.
Right, but we've talked about other grisly murders that have happened in Germany. Why this one case? I just wonder.
I don't know. Only time will tell.
All right, that's it. You know, let's just wrap this up. Obviously.